What is up everyone, Max Lin here, and welcome to episode 14 of Themindhere. This is my bi-weekly update to everyone about upcoming works for this channel, discussing the behind the scenes of my works, and talking about other things that come to mind. It also serves as a way to keep myself accountable and externally motivated to get my work done. If you're interested in how I make my music and videos, feel free to take a look at previous episodes. Welcome to all of you who are listening to me for the first time. If you're enjoying my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing. Starting off with my current music project in the pipeline, I made incremental progress to the transcription. Unfortunately, it wasn't as much as I would have liked, but it was still progress nonetheless. The most important part I figured out was an idea of how I would like the melody and the piece as a whole to progress. Can't Handle This has an odd melody line because Bo Burnham sometimes holds a conversation with the audience rather than singing. Of course, pianos and cellos aren't capable of that, but they can hold their own musical conversation with each other. I listened to the song several times over to form my own interpretation and notated which instrument will have the melody at what point of the song. That way, I can focus on each section and form a draft before stringing all of it together. That was mostly background work, so it's not visible or audible progress, but planning is an important part of any project. Just because there's no tangible results, that doesn't mean progress isn't being made. Once I established how I wanted the transcription to go, I began working on integrating the first melody. All of this is very rough, so more tangible changes to the piece will begin appearing next update. You'll see the changes in the work in progress section at the end of this video. Speaking of videos, the other project I was working on is on its way out of production. Remember that educational video I had done research for? Well, that's going to have to be pushed back a bit because I forgot that I had planned a video explaining the new type of video. So for the past 2 weeks, I've been drawing up the concepts and creating assets for the explanatory video. You'll see what I mean when it comes out, which should be about this week. Sorry to keep you all waiting. I know I haven't posted much besides these updates for a while now. Progress has slowed with the start of track season and some personal reconciliation happening. Of course, I now have a lot of time to work on my projects, which I'll talk about that a little bit later. For now, let's hit those questions. Alfred Prose left a comment on the previous video, and the first part of the question asks if I enjoy making music and other creative arts. I do enjoy doing creative things. It makes my life more interesting and provides a sense of accomplishment that is unique. I do, however, have to have a good amount of mental energy and willpower to do creative things, or my work just becomes bland and a waste of time. The thing about creative work, or I guess work in general, is that you sort of have to enter a flow state to enjoy it. Basically, if the conditions are right, the more you work on it, the more enjoyable the work becomes, to an extent. That basically answers the second part of the question, asking what I find exciting about doing creative work. For me, I've always had a knack for doing creative stuff. Legos, writing, art, and music have all been media which I have experimented in. Now, one thing about doing creative stuff that not many people talk about is that it facilitates the breaking of rules. There's a reason why the term artistic licensing exists. If you understand how the imposed rules work and intentionally break a few, then that's artistic licensing. Not knowing what's going on doesn't count. You have to be competent with how the system works before you start experimenting. Otherwise, it doesn't qualify as experimenting. With creative works, permission is given to not only break rules, but also to make mistakes. In other areas, mistakes are pretty unforgiving, but in the creative realm, mistakes can be its own beauty. That's one thing I appreciate about creativity. There is more room to accept the growing and learning pains that everyone goes through. I only wish that this philosophy extended to other areas. Alright, let's talk about what everyone's been talking about. Coronavirus. I'm not going to talk specifically about the virus though, but about the idea of a crisis in general. When someone says crisis, what image comes to your mind? Often it's of destruction and death, an unpleasant event that should be avoided at all costs. Yes, a crisis is painful, but I'm going to venture to say that it's inevitable. A crisis is bound to happen in a human lifespan. Why? Well, we make mistakes, and not all mistakes are created equal. A crisis is simply the manifestation of a mistake that has become too large, or it reveals an area where improvements should be made. So, in that sense, a crisis isn't really an ill fortune, no pun intended, but one of numerous indicators giving us feedback on what is going well and what warrants change. And often, the emotions associated with a crisis are that of stress, fear, or anger. Those, I would say, are initial responses to something that is unexpected. But you know what it also provides? It provides a huge boost in motivation and work ethic if one hasn't fallen into learned helplessness. Think about it. When a flood or wildfire tears through a town, what do? People get up, check on neighbors to make sure everyone's okay, come back to clean up the mess, and work until their lives have been repaired. Combine that with the fact that a crisis provides harsh feedback. This makes a crisis really an opportunity. Seriously, what better conditions for improvement is there than a tangible example of failure combined with the motivation to work? Let's take the recent issue of the coronavirus, for example. It is definitely a health crisis, one that could kill people. Daily life has been shuttered since schools and many jobs have been suspended. But you know what you got out of this? Time. Time to slow down and think. Time to appreciate what you have and the people around you. Time to reflect on yourself, your country, the world. Look, I'm not going to hold anything back here. I think this crisis is the perfect one for our hyperspeed world. We should all take a look at where we are headed before barreling towards that result. A crisis is not synonymous with a tragedy. I would say that the true tragedy is if the crisis doesn't create a change for the better. If nothing was learned, then the deaths of countless people, the work of medical personnel, and the halting of the economy would have all been for nothing. For me, I'm going to take this as the chance to work on myself and my projects I set out to do. I refuse to see it as just a setback to my education and sports. A crisis is not a tragedy. It only becomes one if you don't see the opportunity within it. Phew. Well, that brings an end to this episode. Thank you everyone who watches these updates. It provides me with feedback on my work and in turn helps me provide everyone with better content to enjoy. I appreciate the support you all have given me throughout this process. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. Stay safe everyone, and I will see you in the next video.
you.